Hey everyone, have you seen Ant-Man and the Wasp? Let's talk. I don't know. Is that a good intro? Do you like that intro? I don't know. Like and subscribe if you want me to make a new intro. So Ant-Man and the Wasp. I liked it. If you couldn't tell from my earlier videos, if you have watched my earlier videos, I won't assume you've watched my earlier videos, but I'm a big fan of the MCU. And I have to say, I've pretty much liked all the films so far. I think the only film that I really was not that excited about and still don't really care about that much would be The Incredible Hulk, way back. And yeah, I think other than The Incredible Hulk, I really like all the MCU films. And I have to say, Ant-Man and the Wasp is no different. It's another good MCU film. Yeah, I liked it. And it's a good MCU film. It's a good Ant-Man sequel. And in general, it's a good summer blockbuster. So I am going, like most of my video talks, I'm going into this video blind, not looking up what other people think or seeing what the critical consensus is. So I have no idea. I think I did see some things that I think would be criticisms for this movie, and it is no way a perfect film, but it is very enjoyable. It's definitely a summer blockbuster. I think if you look at the films too critically, this is definitely part of the MCU, and it is a Marvel movie, so it does very much fit into the box of what a Marvel movie is. And if you're the kind of person who is tired of Marvel movies, then you're probably going to see a lot of problems in this movie. And okay, so one of the big things, I don't know if a lot of people are talking about this. I know that the person next to me in the movie theater immediately started talking about it as the credits were rolling. This is called the Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it's not really so much Ant-Man and the Wasp as it is Ant-Man 2. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think. Okay, so that's really just part of what people came into the movie expecting. You know, it says Ant-Man and the Wasp, so they maybe might expect the Wasp to be a bigger part of the movie than she is. The Wasp is certainly a big character in the movie, but she isn't really what I would call a secondary main character or a secondary protagonist. She is definitely big in the action sequences and a big character in the movie and just the scene she's in. But in terms of what she does, this is definitely Ant-Man 2. And I think there's also probably going to be criticisms on the character arc for Scott Lang in this movie, because there isn't as much as one as you sort of had for Ant-Man. But I think in general, you, with these Marvel movies, I've heard of compared to, it's sort of like they're just TV episodes in a long running series, which I'll credit to, what's his name? He's on Screen Junkies. I've heard him say it a couple times, and now I'm drawing a blank of what his name is. The blonde guy. I'll write it. I'll edit it in so it says it here. Anyway, I think it's not so much an episode in a TV series as it is Marvel has sort of perfected adapting these comic book arcs to movies. And what these movies are in a certain way, it's not so much episodes as they are comic book volumes. They feel like each movie is a collection of like issues put together into a movie. And where was I going with that? and the thing is, with comic books, you don't necessarily get a full character arc in a single volume. Sometimes it happens between multiple volumes. And it's usually meant to be part of a larger storytelling process, which sometimes is good, and sometimes you have a lot of things that don't pay off. And that's, I think, exactly what you see in the Marvel movies. And maybe that might be a tangent for a whole other video. That kind of went off on that thing. I think I'll talk about that. I think I'm going to try and make a video about that at a later point. I'll see if I have the time for it. But to my main point about the movies, you kind of have to look at them a little bit differently. Well, you don't have to. You can look at it however you want. But that's the way I look at them. And yeah, I totally lost my train of thought there. But as I was saying, I think the big thing with looking at this movie is is it Ant-Man and the Wasp, or is it Ant-Man 2? Like I said, and now I'm repeating myself. And it's Ant-Man 2. This is a movie ultimately about Scott Lang as a character. It follows him. I would say the biggest thing for me that makes this an Ant-Man 2 and not Ant-Man and the Wasp is the fact that around the midpoint in the movie, it's Scott's decision to go back and help the Wasp that changes the plot of the movie. Because when you look at sort of the traditional storytelling way of analyzing it, when you look at protagonism, the one way what class was that? One of my professors in college explained it. And of course, I'll preface this is not necessarily the way everyone looks at it, and I don't even know if this is the way most people look at it, but the way he explained it was a protagonist is the person in the story who changes the most, who undergoes the most change. And that would probably be Scott Lang. Honestly, if you look at the movie through that lens, Scott Lang doesn't really change that much. I don't know, maybe someone has a different point of view of that, but he starts the movie, well, you could say he starts the movie under house arrest, and then at the end of the movie, he's no longer under house arrest, and he has to face challenges in order to not go to prison. He has to get, there's several points in the movie where he has to make sure he gets back home before he gets caught. And really, if you look at the movie that way, the movie is about Scott Lang going on these Scott Lang trying to finish up his 3 days of house arrest without getting caught. And really the whole plot with going to the microverse and then trying to get the building back from Ghost is really just a side plot to that. That's what Scott's doing when he's... that's the reason he's not in the house. The whole movie, in a way, is really just about Scott trying not to get caught. So really, the movie is about Scott. And the reason it's not about Hope is because what does Hope actually do in the movie? It's all centered around the side plot. And then you have to... It's not just what does she do, but what are the actions and choices she makes. Because, for one thing, Hope doesn't really change as a character in this movie. She starts one way in the movie, and then she's one way... Basically the same. I mean, at most... You could kind of say maybe she changes her feelings towards Scott, though I would argue that her feelings didn't really change at all. They're pretty much the same as they were at the end of Ant-Man. It's just from the events of Civil War. She may be a little mad at him, but I wouldn't say that's really a character change. That's just her feelings have changed. Not really changed. It's just she's not as mad at him as she was at the beginning of the film, and that's because she hasn't really even seen him. She doesn't actually make a choice like Scott Lang does in this movie. Her choices are basically spelled out at the beginning of the movie, and she doesn't make a change of choice. Scott does make a change of choice in this movie when he decides to go back and help, when he doesn't have to, when he could just stay at home. And I would say the point that it's the point where he's talking with his daughter, and he makes that decision to go help Hope and Hank. That makes him the main character of this movie. And because she doesn't have a moment like that, she doesn't have a moment where she makes a decision like that, she's not the main character. Well, and she's not a secondary main character. She's just part of the plot. But here's the thing. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I know people are probably going to criticize it because it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, but not so much Wasp. It's just a title, and the Wasp is definitely a big character in the movie, and she's, especially in the action sequences, probably more so in the actual action sequences than as a character. She's just a big character in Scott's story. But I would agree you could have called this Ant-Man 2, but Ant-Man and the Wasp is more interesting. And it's just a title. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I would say it's just a title. And yeah, I could understand probably people are going to be disappointed. If you go into this movie thinking that Wasp is going to have basically the same billing as Ant-Man, then you're not going to be as happy with this movie as if you go in expecting Ant-Man 2. So if you haven't seen this movie, which I don't know why you're watching this video, because I realized I didn't give a spoiler warning, but to me, if you're watching a video like this and you aren't aware that there might be some spoilers, then I don't know what to say to you. But yeah, if for some reason you've been watching this video and you haven't seen the movie, I would recommend going into this movie expecting Ant-Man 2. And then if you have seen this movie and you're talking to someone who hasn't seen this movie, tell them to expect Ant-Man 2, not Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp is the title, but it's Ant-Man 2. Don't expect too much Wasp. I mean, don't make it sound like she's not in the movie. She is in the movie. She's just not unequal with Ant-Man. This is an Ant-Man movie first, and then the Wasp is a big character in the movie. It's the movie that introduces the Wasp. I want to talk about a couple more things before, I have one thing that I didn't mention in my notes. So, the Ghost, I don't know. Ghost as a character. I really liked what they did with her. I think it was, I don't have a chart with me, but I think it's the first time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe we've had a villain who's really not a villain. I mean, we've had villains who have, understandable motives, and then villains who have somewhat quasi become non-villains like Loki. But this is the first time we have a villain who really is just a character whose motive, what they're trying to do, runs into what the main character is trying to do, and oppose each other, but not really because they oppose the main character. She just wants to do something, and the way she wants to do it doesn't work with what the main character is trying to do. Ultimately, she wants to get the quantum energy or whatever from Janet Van Dyne, and they want to rescue Janet Van Dyne, and they're afraid that if Ghost does what she does, it's going to kill Janet. And I think it is probably a little neat that, a little too neat that it just, once Janet gets out, she just heals Ghost with her quantum energy or whatever. you might say, well, I mean, that's just a screen telling thing. I think it wouldn't have worked in the movie for her to get out and say, well, there's nothing I can do to help you, but I'll try, and then end the movie that way. Of course, you have to, yeah, that wouldn't have worked. But it did work on a screenplay level in that it's working with information that Ghost didn't have. Like, you can still understand why Ghost does what she does, because she doesn't know that Janet can help her. And it's not even the thing where information isn't shared, which is good, because that happens a lot in screenplays. Because them Scott, Hank, and Hope don't even know that. Not Scott. Hank only discovers that once he finds her, that she can even do that. So, with all the information she's working with, she knows, she's, going to die soon because of this affliction to her, and that, she knows a way to help, but it might hurt someone else. And that's always the thing. Also, it's not a thing where she knows her actions are going to absolutely hurt someone else. She just doesn't know they aren't, which is a great way of making her a sympathetic villain, because in a lot of ways she's not a villain. She's just the antagonist. And I can't say enough about how much I like that as a character, and how it's a little refreshing. It's more of just a smaller superhero movie. Haha, Ant-Man smaller. And yeah, it was refreshing. And I hope everyone else liked it. I don't know. Anyway, I think I'll move on to the last thing I'll talk about, which will be definitely spoiler heavy if you're still watching. And that is the post-credit scene. So, this movie came out after Infinity War, and it definitely shows in the post-credit scene. And I haven't seen what the reaction is to it. I'm of two minds, I think, on this scene. One way I like it because it ties into Infinity War, and it teases how they're Avengers 4. I mean, I don't know how exactly it's going to tie in, but Janet Van Dyne says specifically, oh shoot, I forgot the word. She specifically says time vortex, and how, and one of her lines, that's obviously going to tie into Avengers 4. I mean, that's, I don't know how exactly, if maybe, I don't know if Scott's going to come out of the quantum realm and get the Avengers and then go back into the quantum realm, or something else. But obviously they're going to use a time vortex, which, well, at least that's what I think. And so I'm excited for that. The other part of my mind is that it's kind of sad that you spend this whole movie trying to rescue Janet. The characters do, not you. And then they disappear at the end. But I was thinking, because I know this is after Infinity War, and I was wondering who was going to disappear near the end of the film, and I was wondering if it was I was thinking maybe it was going to be half the characters. So I think this, if they were going to make characters disappear, I think this was the best way to do it, because if you had just Janet or just Hope or just two of them disappear, it would have been undoing that moment, I think. And I think this is the only way you could say, well, they only reunited just to disappear again, but at least all three of them disappeared. Because the thing is, if Hope survived, then you're separating her again from one of her parents, or both of them. And then if Hope was one of the people who disappeared, then you're separating her again, one of her parents from her. Either Janet again, or her father from her again, or also if it's Janet and Hope, then you're separating the father from Janet again, and from her also. So I think this was the only way to do it. Now, I think it would, maybe if things had played out differently in movie release schedule, they could have put this somewhere else. Maybe. I don't know if they would have done that. Just because this is definitely part of the Ant-Man universe, scene-wise. And so, like, imagine if Ant-Man and the Wasp had come out before Infinity War, and then you would just put this scene at the end of Infinity War. But the thing is, unless... Well, I mean, they put the scene with Nick Fury, and he hadn't been in Infinity War, so maybe you could have put this at the end of Infinity War if this movie had come out before it. I don't know. And then also made me think, depending on what happens in Captain Marvel, I wonder if this would have been better as an end scene in that, but I think ultimately coming right after Infinity War, it works to have this, even though it is sort of a gut punch to have the characters reunited and then suddenly bam, disappeared. Anyway, I think those are pretty much all my thoughts for right now about Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know what else to say. So, tell me what you thought in the comments below. Did you like it? Do you agree with what I said? Did you disagree? I don't know. Feel free to comment. And I'll see you around.